Monday, everyone. It's John Lorden here with another episode of Brain Scratch, Case Cracked. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope each and every one of you out there had a nice weekend. This is another tough case that we're looking into, but keep in mind this is Case Cracked, so we do know that we see justice arrive in this one. I call this Terror on Good Friday. It is also known as the story of April Marie Tinsley. Fort Wayne, Indiana, April 1st, 1988, which was a Good Friday. 8-year-old first grader April Tinsley was described as a loving kid that would do anything for anybody. On a chilly Friday afternoon, she was playing with two friends at the apartment complex she lived at when she remembered she had left an umbrella at a friend's house. She told them she would be right back and began walking down Hoagland Street to get her umbrella. She would never return. She would never get to her friend's house, and her family would never see April alive again. Her body was found 3 days later by a jogger in DeKalb County, about 20 miles away from her home. She was found in a ditch in a rural area. The autopsy showed that April had been sexually assaulted and strangled to death. Investigators would find a witness who said April was pulled into a beat-up blue pickup truck. A composite sketch of a suspect was released. However, no arrests would occur. 2 years after the discovery of April's body, a message originally written in pencil, then rewritten in crayon, and again rewritten in marker over the course of several days, popped up on a barn door near where her body had been discovered. The author claimed he was April's killer and that he would do it again. The killer would seemingly go quiet until 2004, when 4 new notes were discovered, 3 of them on the bicycles of young girls in the neighborhood. The notes were placed in plastic baggies. Some included Polaroid photos of his body, and reportedly, several included used condoms. The DNA in the condoms matched the DNA found with April's body. Each of the notes was written on yellow-lined paper, and the killer now seemed focused on receiving some sort of media attention. He clearly stated he was the person that killed April and, quote, "You are my next victim. If you don't report this to police and I don't see this in the paper tomorrow or on the local news." In 2009, 21 years after April's murder, a team of about 50 law enforcement personnel, including a special team from the FBI, met to go over case details to try to breathe new life into the investigation. The team is referred to as the Child Abduction Rapid Deployment, or CARD team. They have been deployed to solve numerous active cases, but occasionally are called to look into cold cases as well. April's face was projected on a large screen at the front of the conference room at the offices of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in Virginia. The experts reviewed the case and felt it was a strong candidate for getting cracked. They had notes written by the killer, pictures left by him, and even several samples of his DNA. They publicized the first meeting on the FBI website and in local media and tried to elicit more tips, hoping for the break that they needed in the case. In 2012, America's Most Wanted went to Fort Wayne to cover April's case for the second time and spoke with the local authorities. They stated that they had received over 700 tips, and their list of over 500 different suspects was down to 81 that still needed to be eliminated. The tip lines lit up as the episode progressed. The coverage brought in an additional 50 tips. However, none of those would have the info needed to crack the case and bring justice to little April. However, the community would not forget her. In 2015, a memorial park was created in her honor at Hoagland and Masterton Avenues. Called April's Garden, it includes a stone memorial, benches, and is maintained by caring neighbors. This is a photo of April's mother there on April 1st, 2018, 30 years to the day after April's murder. In terms of finding her killer, Parabon Nanolabs would enter the equation. The same company that helped crack Christy Myrak's case is running the same processes here. To start with, they used the Snapshot product with the culprit's DNA to create a new digital composite sketch of him in 2016, which was circulated by media. Their newest product in 2018 involves familial DNA matches, essentially using DNA and genetic forensic work to find relatives and eventually suspects, largely using an open source DNA database called GEDmatch. The process was run, and the DNA pointed to 2 brothers as potential suspects. With these recent familial match cases, it appears that there is a 3-part process in terms of the DNA handling. Of course, they first initially collect DNA at the scene of the crime. That is run in the databases, usually on GEDmatch, looking for these partial familial matches. There's some additional work that goes on with genealogists around that. But once they actually identify the suspects, investigators then try to get another sample to run directly against the crime scene data, basically almost like a proof. In this case, investigators got a very strong sample. They had one of the brothers under surveillance, and on July 6th, they searched John D. Miller's trash at his trailer home in Graybill, Indiana. Investigators found 3 used condoms. The DNA from them was a solid match to the crime scene DNA and DNA found with the notes he left years later. 30 years and a few months after the crime, April and her family finally find justice. Neighbors don't have much to say about John Miller. He lives alone, keeps to himself, but his next-door neighbor did note that Miller had a very bad temper and a foul mouth. He also saw Miller kicking and throwing objects around. He does not have a criminal record outside of traffic citations. He previously worked in a fiberglass factory but was fired after literally punching a time clock. His most recent employment is working overnights in the electronics section of a Walmart in Kendallville. Miller was arrested on July 15th on charges of murder, child molesting, and confinement. When the police showed up and asked him if he knew why they wanted to talk to him, he replied with 2 words: April Tinsley. According to police, they asked him to explain what happened to April, and he initially answered, "I can't." They report that Miller later confessed to murdering April, specifically stating that he took her from Hoagland Street to his trailer in Graybill, where the assaults were committed. At Miller's first court appearance on July 16th, 2018, several of April's family attended, wearing shirts that said, "Never forgotten, always remembered, April Tinsley, 1980 to 1988. Back at April's garden, balloons and flowers celebrate the arrival of the answers her friends and family have waited so long for. Is it a coincidence, or maybe poetic justice, that Miller once employed used condoms to terrorize citizens, and ultimately used condoms would help land him in jail? Parabon Nanolabs is really on a hot streak right now, and it looks like that will be continuing. Since May of 2018, they have uploaded more than 140 crime scene DNA profiles to GEDmatch and have gotten hits for more than half of those. I'm sure criminals everywhere are getting very nervous at how often we're seeing familial matches cracking cases that many people thought would stay in the cold case cabinet forever. Case cracked. Another tough one, guys. You know, the cases about the children always really hit me, and I think they probably hit you as well. I'm hopeful that we're going to see a lot more of these historic cases cracked, but I'd also like to see this start being used in more current cases as well. Obviously, this is a technique that doesn't have to only be a cold case cracker. This is a technique that can be employed on any case where DNA was left behind. And, the more and more profiles that GEDmatch gets, the more and more likely that these cases are going to be solved by this mechanism. I think it's just going to increase. I think we're looking at the start of a trend that is likely to be exponential unless some type of privacy law or something along those lines comes across and, try to potentially throw some type of wrench in the gears. But I don't know. We'll definitely keep an eye out for anything like that to happen. And of course, it's comment time. Looking at the comments from last week's episode, Finding Holly and Jessica. And in an interesting twist, we're starting with a comment that's talking about the comments from that one, which were actually about the Christy Marat case, talking about the same method of DNA familial matches as here. And this comment comes from someone I consider a good YouTube buddy of mine. Mr. Gray Hughes also has his own channel. And he's basically commenting on the comment that I commented on someone else's comment, where we were talking about the possibility of cracking the Delphi case using this technology as well. And Gray is basically supporting my conclusion that I was pretty sure that at least the family was aware of this mechanism. Gray states, yes, Sergeant Jerry Holman of the Delphi case met with Paul Holes, the man that solved the EAR case with that DNA technique and was involved in helping the Fort Wayne police in the arrest in the April Tinsley case. I don't know if I really mentioned it. I think I did on my review of CrimeCon, but it was kind of cool to see Paul Holes there. It was probably one of the highlights in terms of people I saw. I mean, yeah, I saw Nancy Grace. People have very interesting opinions about Nancy Grace. And, you get this little charge of like, oh, it's someone that I've seen on television for years, and there they are. But the charge when I saw Paul Holes was just a completely different thing. It just meant so much to me that this is a person that helped kind of engineer this new mechanism in a way, at least from the detective side of this equation. And then, of course, he was nice enough to come to an event like that. I really appreciated. It looks like my YouTube pal party continues because my next comment is from Amber Loves Mystery, another true crime YouTuber. Such an incredibly heartbreaking case. Thank you for covering this. Cases like this are haunting and beyond messed up. Amber, I'm sure you could do a copy paste on that comment for the case that I just talked about as well. Yeah, cases where children are harmed, they hit me the hardest. They hit the top of my list in terms of cases that I want solved. I think that's why we all talk about Delphi so much. It's still recent, but even outside of it being recent, it's just such a terrible story. And the thing that really gets me about it is the girls were smart enough to try to protect themselves by recording footage of this guy, by getting a recording of his voice. I want to see those mechanisms work. I want more children to know that those mechanisms are really smart and to try to do things like that to protect themselves. So I'm hoping at some point that there is a big crack in that story and that we find that those mechanisms did indeed help those young girls in that situation. Still just waiting for that case to get cracked. Nina Armstrong says, I lost it when you showed the picture of the cemetery with all the flowers. Good God, those poor, sweet little angels. Nina, I agree. When I was doing my original research into this case, into the case for Finding Holly and Jessica, I was looking through multiple photos and I saw that one. And I had to double take on it. I'm like, what is happening in that? I've never seen a graveyard so completely filled with flowers, and the way that they lined them and just had them wrapping around. It was amazing. It really touched me. And as a matter of fact, I actually shot the episode, and then I didn't have a copy of that photo. I went looking for it later, specifically because I wanted to include it and share it with you guys because I was so moved by it. And I'm glad many of you talked about it. I'm glad several of you felt that way about it as well. It's one of in terms of motivating factors for me, there's something about that photo that really drives me, that really gives me more inspiration to continue helping with these cases. It's almost like it's a validation of what I'm hoping for when I do this stuff, that there are so many other people out there that care, and that they're going to show up when the time is right. I think that's really what I see in that photo personally for me. Vicky Noeski, hope I'm saying that right, Vicky. Is it common for a criminal to become involved in the case? I don't know that we could really track a statistic on that. I know that in several cases that I've looked into, I've heard of this as a mechanism. And what it basically boils down to is occasionally they will try to get close to a case because they want to keep up to date with what's happening with the investigation so that they can stay one step ahead of it. In a way, I guess you could probably theorize it might be kind of fear-based. You know, I mean, if they were really confident that they got away with the crime, are they going to try to inject themselves like this? Not necessarily. I guess outside of being fear-based, it could also be a type of perversion. You know, it was really weird with Finding Holly and Jessica that Ian basically injected himself in such a way that he was actually helping the family while they were grieving. And that seems like a step beyond, you know, I just want to get close enough to understand what's going with the investigation so I can stay one step ahead of that. That feels to me more like some type of perversion. You know, was he feeling empowered or something every time he was able to see their family so upset about what he had done to them? And maybe there's some kind of kick in terms of him tricking them. You know, the fact that he's there to witness that with his little secret that he actually did it. What I love most about the case from last week is how quickly it was all figured out and how the walls really crumbled very, very fast that he was trying to build to keep himself protected. I really do appreciate that about that case. Cassandra Laberecht, hope I'm saying that right as well. I wish there were stiffer punishment for these people that provide false alibis. Perhaps people wouldn't be so quick to lie to the police if they could be charged with something like accessory after the fact. I've seen so many cases where people give false alibis to individuals and it delays justice and creates wasted time for law enforcement. I think you're right, Cassandra, and I know many of you were talking about this in the comment thread. It was actually even getting a little heated in some places. There's basically two sides to this conversation, that his fiance really did believe that he was innocent and was just doing it to protect him. And some people were saying almost like that's kind of a normal thing, that maybe you could imagine yourself doing that. I don't know. And I think that's a personal thing. I think for some of us, we would err on one side, and for others, we would say, no, there's no way that I would do that. But I think we also have to consider that maybe Maxine actually knew about what was going on here. I didn't really cover it in the episode, but they had had an argument, I believe, on the phone leading up to this occurrence. And I think maybe she had a little more reason to put some more thought into the possibility of him doing this. Also, keep in mind his history. Did she know about any of those other occurrences where the police were looking at him for being inappropriate with young girls? If she did know about that, then that even lowers my ability to believe in this theory that she was just trying to protect her fiance. But I think you're raising a very good point. It should certainly, and it does turn out to be, an obstruction of justice charge, being an accessory to the crime as well. I do think in some cases you might actually see that charge happen. But you're right, I think that there should be stiffer penalties for that. For her to have only served, I think she wound up serving about 1.5 years, if I recall correctly. And then the really strange thing there is all of a sudden her being thrown into police protection, which apparently has happened in a very limited number of cases in the UK. I really don't know how that happened. Is it justified? Well, with the stories we're hearing that women that happen to look like her have been harassed and even possibly attacked, yes, obviously it is somewhat justified. But isn't that a situation that you have kind of created yourself? Like, aren't you really responsible for bringing some level of that type of risk in your life by deciding to do something like this? I don't know that putting her in police protection is the best way to stop people from providing false alibis. I guess that's really the lesson I've kind of taken out of all that. What do you guys think? I know this is a really interesting aspect. I think we could probably continue talking about it in the comments here as well. Thank you guys so much for your time today. Remember, if you would like to support my work, you can do so very easily at thenewlordandarts.com. We've got the Patreon link, we've got the PayPal link, we've got the Lord and Arts merchandise store all integrated in one easy to get to place. I really appreciate you guys checking that out. And please remember, you can follow me at Lord and Arts on Twitter. Probably the best way to get me case suggestions, though I am spending much more time in the YouTube comments now, so of course I'm capturing the case suggestions I see in there as well. Take care, everyone. I'll see you back here on Wednesday with a brand new Brain Scratch Searchlight. See you there.